I always believed that love, real love, was unshakable. That after 12 years of marriage, after raising two incredible kids together, after surviving life's storms side by side, my wife and I had something untouchable, something built to last. I was wrong. I remember that evening so vividly, the way the idea first took shape in my mind. Emily had been away for nearly a week on a business trip, her longest one yet. She was a corporate consultant, often flying from city to city, but this time, she was stationed in Chicago for a high-profile project. The kids missed her. I missed her. So, I decided to do something special. A surprise. I wanted to be the kind of husband that went the extra mile. So I booked last-minute tickets, packed up the kids, and hopped on a plane. The excitement in their eyes made every bit of stress worth it. My son, Jake, couldn't stop talking about how Mom was going to freak out in the best way. My daughter, Lily, spent the whole flight drawing a picture of our family to give to her. I imagined Emily's reaction, her face lighting up, the happy tears, the tight hug she'd give me while whispering, "You're the best husband ever." But life has a cruel way of twisting expectations. We landed late in the evening, checked into a hotel near hers, and I sent her a text. Me, "Hey, how's your trip going?" Emily, "Hey, baby. Just wrapping up some work. Super exhausted. Probably going to crash early tonight." I smiled at my phone. She had no idea. I let the kids rest, but my excitement wouldn't let me sleep. Around midnight, I stepped out onto the balcony of our hotel room, looking at the glowing Chicago skyline. My heart was pounding with anticipation. Tomorrow morning, I'd take the kids over and we'd surprise her at breakfast. But then, something gnawed at me. A strange, uneasy feeling. I checked the location-sharing app on my phone. Emily and I always had it on for convenience. Traveling often meant we liked to keep track of each other. But when I opened the app, I noticed something odd. Her location wasn't at the hotel she said she was staying in. It was somewhere else. A different hotel, a little further out. At first, I reasoned with myself. Maybe it's a business dinner. Maybe she got booked at the wrong hotel. Maybe I was making excuses. I paced the balcony, my chest tightening. I had no proof of anything, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I tried to calm myself down. Emily was dedicated to her job. She worked late all the time. And yet, there was a small voice in my head whispering, "What if there's another reason?" I didn't sleep that night. I told myself that I was just being paranoid, but when the sun rose, that anxiety hadn't faded. I got the kids ready and took them to a nearby cafe for breakfast. Emily still hadn't texted me, so I made a decision. Instead of going to her hotel like I'd planned, I called a cab and went to the location on the app. I told the kids we were making a quick stop before surprising Mom. The moment I stepped into the lobby, something inside me knew. This wasn't a corporate hotel. It was more intimate, smaller. The kind of place you'd stay if you didn't want to be found. My hands felt ice cold as I approached the front desk. The woman behind the counter gave me a polite smile. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I'm looking for my wife, Emily Carter. She's supposed to be staying here." She frowned, then checked her system. "She's here. Room 718. The confirmation hit like a punch to the gut. I turned to the kids, forcing a smile. "Hey, why don't we grab some muffins from that cafe across the street? I'll meet you there in a few minutes." Jake and Lily, excited by the mention of muffins, didn't question it. I watched them cross the street with the cab driver before I turned back to the elevator. Room 718. Every step down the hallway felt heavier than the last. My stomach twisted with nausea, my hands clenched into fists. I told myself I was overreacting, that I'd knock, she'd open the door, and she'd laugh at how crazy I was being. But when I reached the door, I didn't knock. I heard voices, laughter, and then the unmistakable sound of my wife's voice, light, teasing, playful. A tone I hadn't heard from her in a long time. Then came his voice, a deep, unfamiliar male voice. My blood turned ice. I couldn't breathe. I stood there, frozen, listening. The words were muffled, but I caught enough. I heard her say his name. I heard the way she giggled. I heard the bed creak. And that's when my world collapsed. Everything I believed in, our marriage, our family, our love, was a lie. I should have walked away. Should have turned around and left. But instead, my fingers curled into a fist, and before I could stop myself, I knocked. My knuckles barely made contact with the door before I heard a sudden rustle inside. The laughter stopped. A few seconds of eerie silence followed, and then Emily's voice. "Who is it?" she called, sounding light, casual, completely unaware that the man she had betrayed was standing just inches away from the door. I tried to speak, but my throat felt dry. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to walk away, to turn back, gather my kids, and pretend I never came here. That I didn't just hear what I heard. But I couldn't. "Room service," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Silence. Then, I heard hurried movement. Shuffling. The rustle of sheets. Someone muttering something under their breath. Then, the sound of her unlocking the door. The moment it swung open, the world seemed to slow down. Emily stood in front of me, wrapped in nothing but a white hotel robe, her damp hair clinging to her shoulders. Her face, initially glowing with warmth, twisted into an expression I had never seen before, pure, unfiltered panic. "Oh my God," she whispered, her eyes widening as if she had seen a ghost. What are you doing here?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My gaze flickered over her shoulder, and that's when I saw him. A man, mid-40s, athletic build, salt and pepper hair, standing behind her, shirtless, his belt still unbuckled. He looked at me, then at Emily, and without saying a single word, he stepped back into the room, as if hoping to disappear. I swallowed hard, forcing my expression to stay neutral, to hold back the storm inside me. "I was in the neighborhood," I finally said, my voice unnaturally calm. "Thought I'd surprise my wife." Emily's face turned pale. She clutched the robe tighter around herself, opening and closing her mouth like she was struggling to form a coherent sentence. I can explain," she stammered. I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Oh, I'd love to hear it." Her eyes darted toward the man behind her, who was now scrambling to grab his things. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere but here. "Please, let's just go somewhere and talk," she pleaded, stepping forward as if she wanted to touch me. I took a step back. "No," I said. "We'll talk right here." Emily inhaled sharply. "Not in the hallway. Please." I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "Why?" "Afraid someone might hear." She flinched at my words. I saw the guilt, the fear, but most of all, I saw something else. She wasn't sorry. She was sorry she got caught. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. The man, her lover, had finally managed to get his shirt on and was now looking at Emily like he was waiting for her to say something. Emily turned back to me. "It's not what you think." I let out another humorless chuckle. "Really?" "Because what I think is that while I was taking care of our kids, while I was flying across the country with him to give you a loving surprise, you were here, with him." Her lips parted, but no words came out. "Who is he?" I demanded, nodding toward the man. She hesitated, then muttered, "A colleague." I stared at her, then at him. "A colleague," I repeated, voice thick with disbelief. Funny, I didn't realize work meetings required hotel robes. The man, who had been silent this entire time, finally cleared his throat. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married." I snapped my gaze toward him. "Are you kidding me?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. "She wears a wedding ring. She has pictures of our family on her phone. Did you think she just liked wearing matching jewelry for fun?" His face turned red, and for a moment, he looked like he wanted to disappear. Emily stepped between us. "Please, just go somewhere else. We can talk about this privately." I shook my head, taking a step back. "No, we're done talking." I turned on my heel and walked away. She called my name, but I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. I kept walking, my legs moving on autopilot, my body numb, my mind racing. My kids were waiting for me across the street, oblivious to the way their mother had just destroyed the family they loved so much. I stepped out of the hotel, breathing in the cold morning air, trying to keep myself from collapsing. But I knew this was only the beginning. The cold air hit my face like a slap as I stepped out of that hotel. The world outside was waking up, cars honking, people rushing to work, the smell of fresh coffee from the cafe across the street. Everything was normal. Everything was moving. But inside, I felt like I was sinking, like time had frozen in that hallway where I had just looked into the eyes of the woman I had loved for 12 years and seen nothing but betrayal staring back at me. The kids. I forced my legs to keep moving, my breath shaky as I crossed the street toward the cafe where I had left them. My son, Jake, was sitting by the window, happily munching on a muffin, completely unaware that his entire world was about to change. Lily was coloring in a small notepad we had brought for the trip. For a moment, I just stood outside, watching them. They were innocent, pure, and they had no idea. I inhaled deeply, forcing my hands to stop shaking before I stepped inside. Jake spotted me first and grinned. Dad, where's Mom? The question hit like a punch to the gut. I sat down across from them, swallowing down the lump in my throat. She had to take care of some work stuff, I said, forcing a smile. We'll see her later. A lie. One of the first I had ever told them. Lily didn't even look up. Did she like the surprise? I opened my mouth to answer, but the words wouldn't come. The truth was, I had been the one surprised. I had walked into a scene that burned itself into my brain. The image of my wife standing there in that robe, the smell of another man's cologne clinging to the air, the sheer guilt on her face. I forced a nod. She was shocked. Technically, I wasn't lying. But now, I had a choice to make. What next? Did I sit my kids down and tear their world apart right here, in this tiny cafe? Did I pack them up and fly back home without another word? Did I confront Emily again, demand answers that I already knew would be hollow and meaningless? I had no plan. I had no idea what came next. All I knew was that the life I thought I had was gone. The phone call. We finished breakfast. Well, they did. I could barely swallow a sip of coffee. My mind was spinning in 100 different directions, my stomach twisted in knots. Then my phone buzzed. Emily. I stared at the screen for a long moment before stepping outside to answer. What do you want? I asked coldly. There was a beat of silence. Then, her voice hesitant, shaky. Where are you? I exhaled slowly. With the kids. Having breakfast. You know, the thing we came here to do. She let out a slow breath. Please, just come talk to me. I laughed. Actually laughed. Talk? Emily, I think we're past talking. What exactly do you want me to say? Oh, don't worry, sweetheart. I totally understand why you're in a hotel room with some guy while your kids and husband flew across the country to surprise you. She was quiet. And that silence was worse than any excuse she could have given. I clenched my jaw. I don't even know you anymore. That's when she started crying. I never meant for this to happen, she whispered. The anger inside me flared. Oh, you just accidentally fell into bed with another man? That's how this works now. More silence. I pinched the bridge of my nose, trying to control the storm of emotions raging inside me. You know what, Emily? We're done talking. No, please, she begged. Just let me explain. Explain? What was left to explain? I had seen everything I needed to see. The drive to the airport. I went back inside, plastering a smile onto my face for the kids. Change of plans, I said. We're heading home early. Jake frowned. What about Mom? I forced my voice to stay steady. She's busy with work. We'll see her later. Another lie. I got us packed up and called for a cab. Every second that passed felt surreal, like I was watching my life happen from the outside. My body moved on autopilot, checking out of the hotel, making sure the kids had all their things, helping Lily with her coat. I barely even heard Emily's texts coming in, one after another. Please, don't leave. Can we just talk? I'll come meet you, please. Just tell me where you are. I ignored every single one. At the airport, I finally broke. While waiting in the terminal, I went into the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and just breathed. My hands were shaking. My legs felt weak. 12 years. 12 years of marriage. And just like that, it was over. I thought of every moment I had spent loving her. The times I stayed up late helping her through work stress. The way I used to surprise her with little gifts just to make her smile. The nights we spent talking about our future, growing old together, traveling the world. Had it all been a lie? Or had I just been blind? A sharp knock on the bathroom door startled me. Dad? Jake's voice called from the other side. Are you okay? I swallowed hard, wiping my face. Yeah, buddy. I'm good. I wasn't. But I had to be. For them. The flight home. The plane ride was quiet. Lily fell asleep on my shoulder. Jake had his headphones on, staring out the window. And I just sat there, staring at my wedding ring. At what point had she stopped loving me? Had it been months? Years? Or had she ever loved me at all? By the time we landed, I had made my decision. This wasn't something we could fix. This wasn't something I could forgive. Emily had made her choice. Now, it was time for me to make mine. The moment we stepped off the plane, I felt like I was walking through a fog. The kids were exhausted, and honestly, so was I, emotionally, mentally, physically. Every part of me felt like it had been ripped open, and the worst part? I had to keep it together. For them. I gripped Jake and Lily's hands as we walked through the terminal, their small fingers wrapped around mine like lifelines. I had no idea how I was going to break this to them. How do you look into your child's eyes and tell them that their mother, the woman they adore, has shattered the family they love? As we approached baggage claim, my phone vibrated. I already knew who it was before I looked. Emily. I clenched my jaw and ignored it. We grabbed our luggage and headed toward the exit, where my brother, Matt, was waiting for us. I hadn't told him everything over the phone, just that we had cut our trip short and needed a ride home. But the second his eyes met mine, I knew he could tell. Something was wrong. Hey, guys, Matt said, forcing a smile as he helped load the bags into his truck. How was the big surprise? I didn't answer. Jake shrugged. We didn't get to see Mom much. She was busy. My brother shot me a glance, his brow furrowing. I looked away. I wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. The drive home was quiet. The kids dozed off in the back seat, and Matt kept glancing at me like he was waiting for me to speak. Finally, he broke the silence. What happened? I stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past. My hands curled into fists. She cheated, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Matt inhaled sharply. Jesus. Yeah, we didn't say anything else. There wasn't much left to say. Home, but not home. When we pulled up to the house, everything looked the same. The porch light was on, the welcome mat was slightly askew, the wreath Emily had hung up last week still swayed in the breeze. But it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a lie. I carried Lily inside, her little arms wrapped around my neck, and tucked her into bed. Jake was already half asleep by the time I checked on him. For a moment, I just stood in the doorway, watching them breathe, feeling the crushing weight of what I had to do next. They deserved the truth. But not yet. I stepped into my own bedroom, and that's when I saw it, our bed. The bed where we had whispered secrets late at night. Where she had rested her head on my chest and told me she loved me. Where I had kissed her forehead before falling asleep, believing stupidly that we were forever. And now? I didn't even know if I could sleep in it. I turned on the lamp, sitting on the edge of the bed, my head in my hands. My phone buzzed again. Emily. I exhaled sharply. I wasn't ready for this. But I also couldn't avoid it forever. I swiped to answer. The first thing I heard was her breathing, shaky, uneven, like she had been crying. Thank God, she whispered. I was so afraid you wouldn't pick up. I said nothing. Are the kids okay? She asked. They're fine, I said flatly. A pause. Then, I'm so sorry. I closed my eyes, trying to steady myself. Sorry for what, exactly? Sorry that you did it? Or sorry that I caught you? She let out a broken sob. I never wanted this to happen. I laughed coldly. Oh, so you just tripped and fell into bed with another man? Silence. Who is he? I demanded. Another long pause. His name is Patrick, she admitted. He's a colleague. I already knew that much. But hearing his name? It made it real. How long? I asked. She hesitated. How long? Almost a year. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. A year. A whole year. While I had been kissing her goodbye before work, making her coffee, running my hands through her hair at night, she had been sneaking around behind my back for a year. I was going to stop, she whispered. I swear. I wanted to. But what? I snapped. But I didn't know how. I let out a slow, shaky breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Do you love him? More silence. And that was my answer. I swallowed the lump in my throat, gripping the phone tighter. I want a divorce. She let out a sob. No, please. Let's talk. We can fix this. There's nothing to fix, Emily. I love you. I almost threw the phone across the room. No, you don't. Yes, I do. I clenched my jaw. Then why did you do this? Her voice cracked. I don't know. And that was the final nail in the coffin. She didn't even know. I exhaled sharply, rubbing my temples. I'll talk to a lawyer tomorrow. No, please, don't do this, she sobbed. Think about the kids. Oh, now you care about the kids? I shot back. Were you thinking about them when you were sleeping with Patrick? She broke down completely then, sobbing into the phone. I couldn't listen anymore. I ended the call. And just like that, it was over. The next step. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the floor, feeling completely hollow. The weight of everything crashed down on me at once. The love I had lost. The life I had built that was now crumbling. The reality that, from this moment on, everything was going to change. I had to protect my kids. I had to move forward. And most of all, I had to make sure that Emily never had the power to break me again. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything over and over again in my head. Every moment of the past 12 years felt like a lie now. Every "I love you," every kiss, every late-night conversation, it was all meaningless. A carefully constructed illusion that I had fallen for, blindly and completely. Emily had been cheating on me for almost a year. A year. That meant every holiday, every family dinner, every weekend we spent together, she had been living a double life. While I was helping Jake with his homework or reading bedtime stories to Lily, she had been sneaking away to be with him. Patrick. I clenched my fist just thinking about him. I didn't know much about him, only what I had seen in that hotel room. The way he scrambled to get dressed, the way he looked at me with that guilty, sheepish expression. He hadn't said much, probably hoping he could slink away unnoticed. But he wasn't unnoticed. He was the reason my family was shattered. No, Emily was the reason. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Anger wasn't going to help me now. I needed to focus on what mattered, my kids. And the first step was making sure they were okay. Breakfast with the kids. By the time the sun rose, I was already up, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. My body felt heavy, drained. But the moment I heard tiny footsteps coming down the hall, I straightened up, forcing my face into something that resembled normal. "Morning, Dad," Jake said groggily, rubbing his eyes. "Morning, buddy." Lily shuffled in behind him, still clutching the stuffed bunny she slept with every night. "Is Mommy coming home today?" The question hit me like a ton of bricks. I set my coffee down, choosing my words carefully. "Not today, sweetheart." She frowned but didn't press further. I got them breakfast, pancakes, their favorite, and sat with them as they ate, pretending everything was fine. Laughing at Jake's jokes. Asking Lily about her drawings. But I wasn't fine. And deep down, I knew they could sense it. The conversation I couldn't avoid. The second I dropped the kids off at school, my phone started buzzing again. "Emily." I let it ring. Then came the text messages. "Emily, please, pick up. Emily, we need to talk. Emily, I can't lose you like this." Lose me? She had already lost me. Still, I knew I couldn't avoid her forever. Not when we had 2 kids together. Not when there were legal decisions to be made. So I took a deep breath, pulled over into an empty parking lot, and finally called her back. She answered immediately. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Thank you." I stayed silent. She sniffled, her voice breaking. I don't even know where to start." "Try explaining why you threw away 12 years of marriage," I said coldly. She let out a shaky breath. "I never meant for this to happen." I scoffed. "Yeah, you said that already. But you don't accidentally cheat for a year, Emily." "I was unhappy," she admitted. The words sliced through me like a blade. "Unhappy?" I repeated. "And instead of talking to me, your husband, you decided to sleep with someone else?" "I was lost," she whispered. I felt like I wasn't myself anymore. Like I was just a wife. A mother. I needed to feel something different. I clenched my jaw. "So instead of telling me how you felt, you just, what? Found a distraction?" Silence. I laughed bitterly. "You know what the worst part is? I would have done anything to fix this. If you had just talked to me, if you had just told me you were unhappy, I would have fought for us. I would have tried. But you didn't even give me a chance." She started crying again. I know I messed up. But I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose our family." I let out a slow breath. "It's too late for that, Emily." "No," she pleaded. "Please, let's try therapy. Let's work through this." I shook my head. "I'm done." I could hear the sheer panic in her voice. "You can't just walk away." "Watch me," I said, then hung up. Meeting with the lawyer. By the afternoon, I was sitting in my lawyer's office. A divorce had never been something I thought I'd have to consider. But now? There was no other option. "I want full custody," I told him. The lawyer sighed. "That's tough to get unless you can prove she's an unfit mother." I clenched my jaw. "She's been lying to me for a year. How can I trust her?" "She's still their mother," he reminded me. "And unless she's a danger to them, the court will likely push for joint custody." I hated it. The thought of sharing my kids with a woman who had shattered our family made me sick. But the law was the law. The first night without her. That night, the house felt unbearably empty. I sat on the couch, staring at the framed family photos on the wall. Smiling pictures of me and Emily. Our wedding day. The kids' birthdays. Vacations. All fake. I should have taken them down. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I grabbed a blanket, lay down on the couch, and stared at the ceiling. For the first time in years, I fell asleep alone. And for the first time in years, I didn't dream of her. I woke up on the couch with a stiff neck and the weight of reality pressing down on me like a boulder. The silence in the house was deafening. No sound of Emily getting ready in the morning, no scent of coffee brewing, no familiar hum of her presence. For 12 years, this house had been ours. Now, it felt like a museum of a life that no longer existed. The only thing that kept me from completely breaking down was the sound of little footsteps approaching. "Dad." I turned my head and saw Lily standing there, her stuffed bunny clutched tightly in her tiny arms. Her eyes were still heavy with sleep, her hair a tangled mess. But there was something else in her expression, something that made my stomach twist. Worry. She knew. Not everything, of course, but she knew something was wrong. I sat up, forcing a smile. "Morning, sweetheart." She climbed onto the couch and curled up beside me, resting her head on my chest. "Is Mommy coming home today?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. I wasn't ready for this conversation, but I had no choice. I took a deep breath. "Mommy and we need to talk about some things." Lily lifted her head, frowning. "Are you mad at her?" I hesitated. "Sometimes, grown-ups go through hard things," I said carefully. "But no matter what, we both love you and Jake very much." She was silent for a moment, then whispered, "Are you getting a divorce?" My heart nearly stopped. How did she even know that word? I looked down at her innocent face, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something deeper than anger. Guilt. My children didn't deserve this. They deserved stability, love, security. And now, because of Emily's choices, their world was crumbling just like mine. I ran my fingers through Lily's hair, choosing my words carefully. "We're still figuring things out. But no matter what happens, we're still a family." She nodded, but I could tell she wasn't convinced. And honestly, neither was I. Emily's desperation. By noon, my phone had rung 7 times. All from Emily. I ignored every call. But then, as I was making lunch for the kids, I heard a car pull into the driveway. My heart stopped. I walked to the window, and, sure enough, there she was, Emily. She was standing outside her car, wringing her hands together, her eyes scanning the house like she was afraid to knock. I clenched my jaw. She had some nerve showing up here. The kids were in the other room, oblivious. I took a deep breath and stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "I needed to see you." I folded my arms. "I told you everything I needed to say." She stepped forward. "Please, don't shut me out." I let out a bitter laugh. "Shut you out? You shut me out the moment you decided to sleep with someone else." She flinched, but I didn't care. "You didn't even let me fight for us, Emily." I continued, my voice shaking. "You made that choice. You killed this marriage." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I know I did. And I hate myself for it." I didn't respond. I just stood there, waiting for whatever excuse she was about to give me. "I don't want to lose our family," she whispered. I sighed. "You should have thought about that before you threw it away." Her lips trembled. "I was selfish. I was stupid. But I still love you." I shook my head. "You don't get to say that anymore." A tear rolled down her cheek. "I'll do anything. Just don't let this be over." I studied her face, searching for the woman I had once loved. The woman I had built a life with. But all I saw was a stranger. "This isn't a movie, Emily," I said, my voice flat. "There's no grand gesture that's going to fix this. No magic words. You made your choice." She let out a sob, covering her face with her hands. I exhaled slowly, my anger fading into exhaustion. "I need to focus on the kids now." She looked up at me, her eyes desperate. "Can I see them?" I hesitated. Then, I shook my head. "Not today." A fresh wave of tears ran down her face. "Please. I'll let you know when we can talk about custody," I interrupted. "But right now, you need to go." She stared at me for a long moment, as if hoping I'd change my mind. But I wouldn't. Finally, she nodded. And just like that, she turned and walked away. What comes next? As I stood there, watching her drive off, I felt something I hadn't felt since this nightmare began. Relief. For the first time, I realized I didn't need her anymore. She had shattered my heart, but she hadn't shattered me. I had my kids. I had my future. And no matter how much pain I had to go through, I was going to be okay. The moment Emily's car disappeared down the street, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief, but it was fleeting. The reality of everything settled in again like a weight pressing down on my chest. I had told her to leave. I had refused to let her see the kids. I had drawn the line that should have been drawn long ago. But this was far from over. There were still decisions to make, conversations to have, and, most of all, wounds that would take a long, long time to heal. A father first. After Emily left, I sat in the car for a few minutes, gripping the steering wheel, trying to process everything. The rage, the heartbreak, the exhaustion, it all blended together into something I couldn't even describe. Then, a small voice pulled me back to reality. Dad. I turned and saw Jake standing in the doorway, squinting against the afternoon sunlight. Who was that? I forced a smile, even though my insides felt like they were on fire. Just your mom stopping by. He frowned. She didn't come in. I swallowed hard. No. She had to leave. Jake hesitated, then said something that nearly knocked the air out of my lungs. Did she do something bad? I froze. For a 9-year-old, Jake was perceptive, too perceptive. He must have sensed something in the way I spoke, the way Emily had been gone without explanation, the way I had been acting differently. I kneeled down so we were eye level. Jake, sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. Big ones. And right now, your mom and I are trying to figure out what's best for all of us. He stared at me for a long time. Are you going to break up? My heart twisted. I don't know yet. I lied. His expression was unreadable. Okay. Then, without another word, he turned and walked back inside. I felt sick. I had always promised myself that I would protect my kids from pain, from heartbreak, from this. And now, I had failed them. Emily's last attempt. That night, after I had put the kids to bed, my phone rang again. Emily. I sighed, rubbing my temples. I knew I couldn't keep avoiding her forever. I picked up. Hi, she said softly. I didn't respond. She took a shaky breath. I talked to a lawyer today. My grip on the phone tightened. And he said that joint custody is the best option, she said quickly, like she was trying to convince me before I could shut her down. I know you're angry, but the kids need both of us. I exhaled slowly. I don't trust you. I know, she whispered. But Jake and Lily love me. Please, let's figure this out without a fight. A part of me wanted to say no. To tell her that she had lost the right to be in our children's lives the moment she chose another man over our family. But another part of me, the father in me, knew that keeping them away from her would only hurt them more. I'll think about it, I said finally. She let out a small, relieved breath. Thank you. I was about to hang up when she spoke again. Can we talk? Not about the kids. Just us. I scoffed. Us? There is no us. Please, she begged. Just one conversation. I need to explain. I clenched my jaw. There was nothing she could say that would change what she had done. But I knew that if I didn't hear her out now, she would keep trying. Fine, I said. Tomorrow. One conversation. That's it. Okay, she whispered. Thank you. I hung up before she could say anything else. The truth comes out. The next day, I met Emily at a neutral location, a park near our house. I didn't want to see her in our home. That place was mine now. She was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. Her eyes were tired, her posture tense. I sat down next to her, leaving space between us. Talk. She took a deep breath. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to understand. But I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. I laughed bitterly. You have a funny way of showing it. Her eyes filled with tears. I was lost. I felt invisible, like I wasn't me anymore. And Patrick, he made me feel seen again. I clenched my fists. So you threw away our family for him? She shook her head. It wasn't about him. It was about me. I was selfish. I was weak. And I hate myself for it. I stared at her, searching for something. Remorse, regret, truth. Maybe she really did regret it. Maybe she really did hate herself. But it didn't matter. You destroyed us, I said, my voice shaking. And no amount of guilt is going to change that. She wiped her eyes. I know. Silence stretched between us. For the first time since this all began, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even heartbroken. I was done. I'll co-parent with you, I said finally. Because the kids deserve both of us. But you and me? We're over. Her lip trembled, but she nodded. I understand. I stood up. I hope you figure out who you are, Emily. But I'm not waiting around for you. And with that, I walked away. A new beginning. That night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she looked up at me with sleepy eyes. Daddy? Yeah, sweetheart. She yawned. Are we gonna be okay? I swallowed the lump in my throat and smiled. We're gonna be better than okay. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. The weeks that followed were filled with changes. Hard ones. Messy ones. Ones I never imagined I'd have to make. Emily officially moved out. She packed her things while I took the kids to the park, avoiding the moment she walked out of our house for the last time. When we returned, the bedroom felt different. The closets were half empty, the bathroom shelves cleared, and the house no longer carried the scent of her perfume. And yet, it still felt like she was everywhere. The first night alone in that house was the hardest. I sat in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how different things had been just a month ago. Back then, I was a husband, a partner, someone who believed in love, in trust, in the sanctity of marriage. Now, I was a single father, a man rebuilding his life from the ground up. But surprisingly, I wasn't scared. Co-parenting with a stranger. Emily and I set up a custody schedule. I got the kids most of the time, and she got alternating weekends. The first time I dropped them off at her new apartment, I expected her to cry, to beg for more time, to try to rekindle what we lost. But she didn't. Instead, she stood in the doorway, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Thank you for letting me be in their lives," she said quietly. I nodded, keeping my emotions in check. "They need their mom." She hesitated, then whispered, "And their dad needs to be happy, too." That was the last time we ever spoke about us. From that day forward, our conversations were about one thing, the kids. No more late-night apologies. No more attempts to fix the unfixable. No more lingering hopes that things could go back to the way they were. That chapter was closed. Healing takes time. At first, being alone felt unnatural. I was used to sharing life with someone, used to waking up beside a warm body, used to coming home to a partner. But little by little, the emptiness became freedom. I reconnected with friends. I spent more time with my kids. I started working out again, taking care of myself in a way I hadn't in years. And most of all, I let myself breathe. For too long, I had been drowning in the betrayal, the heartbreak, the anger. But as time passed, I realized something. I wasn't broken. Yes, Emily had destroyed our marriage. She had shattered my trust. She had chosen herself over our family. But I had survived. And that meant something. The last message. Months later, out of the blue, Emily sent me a message. "Emily, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you're happy. You deserve that." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then, for the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel rage, or sadness, or even resentment. I just felt nothing. And that's how I knew I had truly moved on. I didn't reply. Instead, I put my phone down, walked into the living room, and sat beside my kids as they played a board game. They were what mattered now. Not the past. Not the betrayal. Not the woman who threw everything away. My life wasn't about Emily anymore. It was about me. And for the first time in a long time, I was free.